Greetings viewers, I am Eric the Car Guy, and I'm also known as ETCG1 when I decide to post videos on this channel, which is usually on Mondays. Anyway, here on ETCG1 I start things off with, hey, if it is your birthday, happy birthday, and please enjoy this digital cake I got for you. Today's topic, well, I hope it inspires some discussion, and I hope that I brought you in, but 1,000 horsepower vehicles, is it worth it? You know, 1,000 horsepower, do you need it? I'm not exactly sure of the title, how it's going to work out, but this conversation really started because I've been doing some research on building the Type R, which I hope to do later this year, possibly starting it in the fall. I kind of want to get my use out of the brand new tires that I just got, and I love freaking driving the thing just the way it is, so there's that. So before I decide to tear it all apart, I'm doing my research, gathering up parts. Some of you know about the Jackson Racing supercharger that I recently got for it that I plan on installing on it. But in addition to the supercharger, I want to make the supercharger reliable, and to do that I am sending it off to LHT Performance, who is spearheaded by a man named John. Sadly I can't remember his last name, but anyway, John has built many a B series and messed around with many a supercharger on a B series, and in fact claims to have made the most powerful B series with the supercharger, and I believe him. So he knows a thing or two about these engines, and these are the kind of people that I really enjoy talking to and learning from, especially before diving into something like this. Yes, I was an Acura technician for 8 years. Yes, this is my 7th Acura Integra, the Type R that is. So I know my way around an Integra, that is. But as far as modifications and buildings, it's not something I've done before personally. I've driven cars that were very poorly built. For some reason, Hondas seem to suffer from some very poor builds and that type of thing. Anyway, I'm gathering knowledge. And John and I are having this conversation, and he's talking about my power goals for the car, which I think is an important thing to think about before you get into it, hence the reason this discussion that we're having now. Well, this video that I made, how's that? Anyway, a word that he said, like he pulled it right out of my head, was that, you know, you get past a certain point with power output and the car becomes unbalanced. And that was the word I was thinking of exactly when he said it. And that's kind of the reason I want to make this video, because I think a lot of us starting out, you know, think to ourselves, well, let's just get as much power out of this car, this engine as we possibly can. We're going to boil the tires. We're going to make this thing rip. And okay. And that's great. You know, I really appreciate that enthusiasm. And I had a bit of that myself when I started building the Fairmont. But I realized that, you know, having so much power that I couldn't manage wasn't going to be manageable. And here's the other thing I learned when making a high horsepower vehicle, and we'll call the Fairmont a high horsepower vehicle. I'll go back to my numbers that it did on the dyno, which are old numbers now. It did 575 horsepower and 620 pound-feet of torque. I can't remember exactly what it was. And that was when it had a carburetor on it, and that was like after we spent the entire day trying to figure out why the thing wouldn't make power. And I'll link that video down in the description so you can see why that was. Point is, since then, it's gotten fuel injection, it's gotten a better ceramic ball bearing turbo, a better exhaust, and I've refined and tuned it a bit better as well. I'm pretty certain it's putting out more power than that. Let's say, let's make a guess out there. Sometime I'll get this tested. By the way, if you're watching this and you have a tuning shop in Cincinnati, I'd love to talk to you, because I'd like to do some tuning stuff with the Type R, and also with the Fairmont, and also with the truck, and make some videos and that kind of thing. So if you're in the area and you want to partner up on this kind of thing, I'm very interested in that. But anyway, let's guess that the Fairmont has 500 at the wheels. It is downright frightening, you know, at times, because I drive the car in the street, there's air conditioning in it, I put sound deadening in it, it has power steering, you know, it's got creature comforts and such. It wasn't necessarily made to be a race car, it was made to be a sleeper, basically intended to embarrass cocky BMW drivers. Not necessarily in the corners, but certainly from stoplight to stoplight, or come close to it. It's nothing else make them scratch their heads and wonder why this old POS is keeping up with them, if not maybe pulling away. Anyway, that's why I built the car. And I did exactly that one day. And the guy was cool. When we got to the next stoplight, he was just looking at me, just kind of like, and I'm just laughing. I'm like, that was fun. But he was cool about it. And I was just picking on BMWs, whatever. In fact, I've driven them, and some of them are amazing cars. I really enjoy it. That's another video. Anyway, 1,000 horsepower vehicles. So this is what I learned. I kind of ended up building the Fairmont twice, and part of the reason for doing that was because the power output that my engine was capable of was making it so that I had to bring up all the supporting systems. You might remember I started out with a T5 transmission for the Fairmont. As soon as I did the dyno test, I emailed Paul Cangialosi, who built the T5, and said, what do you think? He says, no way. You got to get a TKO 600, which is what he recommended, which is what is in there now, because that T5 will explode at that power level. You'll destroy it. So there, I had to upgrade the transmission. And then you also have to upgrade other components and the suspension and the brakes and all this other stuff, because 1,000 horsepower without the ability to point it in the direction you want it to go, without being able to stop it before you hit something that's stationary, is extremely important. Now, I get it, 1,000 horsepower and above and all that kind of thing. It's great. I mean, just impressing your friends, all that kind of thing, making YouTube videos with large-breasted girls, it's fun stuff. I get it. But the thing of it is it really usable? And I wanted to drive my Fairmont on the street. I also want to drive my Type R on the street. So I'm very much considerate of the power output and how I'm going to do it, because really, well, I probably should make a separate video on just talking about my plans for the Type R, and we can go down that rabbit hole then. But point is, I don't see 1,000 horsepower Type R. I don't think that's necessary. I think bumping it up over stock, I'm happy to get another 50 horsepower, but what I'm really looking for out of that car is some bottom end torque. That's why I went with a supercharger. That's what superchargers are good for, bottom end torque. That engine is awesome at high RPM, doesn't need anything. But I think the low RPM performance could be improved. That's why I'm going for a supercharger. So in other words, there's some logic to the reason why I'm adding power to this engine, as opposed to just saying, let's get as much as we possibly can out of it. Not that that's not fun, but if you're a budget builder, okay, like most of us are, be realistic, because I think by the time you get to the other side of that 1,000 horsepower and you realize all the extra money you had to spend to do it, and then you get behind the wheel and you realize that it's undrivable. That's what I mean when I say unbalanced. Like, you hit the gas and the car can't hold traction, it can't stay on the road, I can barely stay on the road with a Fairmont sometimes. Like, second gear and nailing it, it's ready to go. It is frightening, like I said. It makes a beautiful noise while it's happening though. So, like I said, I get it. And these days, like back when I started getting into hot rodding and all this stuff in like the late 80s, early 90s, like, you would be impressed if you had a small block Chevy with 500 horsepower, which, is kind of sort of what I was going for with the truck build. You notice my second build, which was the truck, I didn't go for any forced induction, nitrous, or any of that kind of stuff. No pie in the sky horsepower numbers. And I did that because I wanted to keep the truck a truck. I wanted to make the engine perform as good as it could, which I feel it does. The fuel injection system, the ProFlow 4, that's actually worked out pretty well. And I'm very happy with the power output. I'm not exactly sure what it is, but if it's close to 400, I'm happy at the crank I'm talking about. We'll find out someday. Like I said, hit me up. EricTheCarGuy.com. I think through my experience, I've learned that there's a certain point where the car is usable and fun. And and if you pass that point, it gets expensive and dangerous. And these days, I talked about the 500 horse out of a small block Chevy. These days, you go to a salvage yard, grab yourself an LS and an eBay Turbo, and bolt on, there's 1,000 horsepower. It's kind of fun and cool, and someday I hope to actually try that, so maybe I'm go back to this video and say I wish I never made it. Who knows? I don't know. But up to this point, especially after the first build with the Fairmont, I am much happier targeting a more reasonable power output, because I would rather just put the supercharger on that and pretty much keep the rest of the supporting systems the same. Like I said, we'll make another video about that if you like. Tell me in the comments. But anyway, what do you think? Do you unbalance the car once you cross a certain point, once you add too much power? Is there such a thing as too much power? Is there such a thing? Because, this is a discussion channel. You tell me. You tell me what you think down in the comments about all this, whether I'm on point or not, and talk about the builds that you have or have not built or you'd like to build. I'd like to hear about it anyway, just to get your thoughts on the subject. If you have automotive questions, I ask you head to EricTheCarGuy.com. I'll link that in the description along with additional stuff, including some videos and things that I mentioned, including LHT Performance. You want to check them out, all that stuff. Description has answers. Check there first. Please be sure to like, comment, subscribe, share the video with the world. Appreciate it when you do that. I really, really do. Thank you. Be safe, have fun, stay dirty, wash your hands, stay safe, all that kind of thing. And I will see you next time. Thanks for watching. Next time is next Monday.